The video begins the collection by introducing the migration period, which spans from approximately 300th AD to 600th AD, also known as the Barbarian invasions. It was a period in European history marked by large-scale migrations that led to the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the subsequent settlement of its former territories by various tribes, as well as the establishment of barbarian kingdoms. In the first video, we examine the location and economy of tribal groups that participated in the migration period, as well as the changes in the Germanic-speaking tribes that resulted from their interactions with the Roman Empire. By the beginning of the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire had conquered most of the territories in Western Europe west of the Rhine and south of the Danube. The empire's frontiers often followed natural boundaries, most notably major rivers, behind which a network of roads facilitated the movement of troops between connected forts. Famous examples of Roman border systems in Europe include the limes Germanicus, the Danubian limes, and the limes Daciae. Beyond the imperial borders, across the North European plain, lived a variety of tribes collectively referred to by the Romans as barbarians. These were predominantly Germanic-speaking separate tribes and tribal confederations, who had migrated from southern Scandinavia and northern Germany, eventually inhabiting a broad area that stretched roughly from the Rhine in the west to the Vistula in the east and to the upper Danube in the south. The Romans referred to this territory as Germania, also known more specifically as Magna Germania, or sometimes as Germanic Barbaricum, to distinguish it from the Roman provinces of Germania Inferior and Germania Superior. In the early period of contact with the Roman Empire, these tribes were politically fragmented and lacked centralized authority. Gradually, some tribal groups near the imperial frontier began to establish diplomatic or client relationships with Rome, in exchange for which they were granted certain privileges and support. These relationships would later be formalized under the designation foederati in the later Roman Empire. In the early period of contact with the Roman world, the political organization of Germanic-speaking tribes was primarily based on tribal councils, also known as a thing or a folkmoot, that determined tribal policies and resolved legal disputes. Things reflected a largely egalitarian and decentralized social structure. Climatic differences across Europe and contacts with the Roman Empire significantly influenced the development of agriculture among the barbaric tribes during this period. The North European plain, where the Germanic tribes lived, had moderate, wet winters and ample summer rainfall. The soils of northern Europe, particularly those composed of heavy clay, required advanced plowing technology for efficient farming. Roman agricultural methods, adapted to the Mediterranean climate and soil, were relatively sophisticated, supporting surplus production and trade of farm products. However, Roman agricultural methods lost some of their effectiveness in the specific climate and soil of the North European plain. Many Germanic tribes, mainly those farther from Roman influence, relied on simpler tools and practiced subsistence agriculture. The tribes allied with the Roman Empire adopted only certain aspects of Roman farming methods that were suitable for the climate and soil of the areas in which they lived. Soil was cultivated with the light wooden art, also known as the scratch plough. The Germans primarily focused on breeding livestock and poultry. Therefore, agriculture played a relatively minor role in the economies of the Germanic tribes compared to those of the Roman provinces. The relative absence of surplus and complex metallurgy among many Germanic tribes, located far away from Roman influence, contributed to a simplification of craft production. it inhibited the development of advanced tools such as heavy iron plows. Roman military leaders eventually concluded that extending the empire deep into Germania was not economically viable. The potential tribute and resources that could be extracted from these sparsely settled and underdeveloped regions did not justify the high costs of prolonged military campaigns and maintaining garrisons in the annexed territory. Roman geographers and writers gradually classified the territories and peoples inhabiting them beyond the borders of the empire. In addition to Germania, they referred to Scythia as the territory of the East European plain. However, this was often a vague and imprecise label. The inhabitants of these eastern regions, such as the Veneti, likely had Baltic or Proto-Slavic origin. They practiced a rudimentary form of agriculture and lived in small, scattered farming communities. Colder winters and hotter, drier summers than those on the North European plain, along with the lack of sophisticated metalworking required to create agricultural implements for cultivating the soil of the East European plain, hampered the development of agriculture. Their economic isolation and limited trade with the Roman world further hindered their growth. In the steppes south of the Veneti, the Sarmatians were dominant, a confederation of Iranian-speaking nomadic peoples that maintained a pastoral economy, had trade connections with Rome. By the early first millennium, Barbarian Europe could be seen as comprising three general economic zones. Closest to the Roman Empire were the most Romanized groups, primarily client states and tribal allies, whose agriculture and crafts, including metalworking, had become more advanced due to Roman influence. Further away lived the Germanic-speaking tribes, with a lower level of economic complexity and technological development. Still farther east, in the territories referred to as Scythia by Roman authors, agricultural practices and craftsmanship were even more rudimentary. By the 4th century, the political organization of many Germanic tribes had evolved. Power increasingly became centralized in the hands of kings, whose authority was often hereditary and rooted in kinship networks. These rulers typically maintained personal military retinues, warrior bands that could number in the hundreds. Below them existed a class of free men who participated in communal decision-making and bore arms. Freedmen and slaves occupied the lowest rung of society. The Roman Empire's frontier garrisons created a constant demand for food and supplies. Supplying these garrisons from distant, agriculturally rich regions within the empire proved costly. For example, transporting wheat on horse-drawn carts doubles the price every 80 kilometers. In response, Rome encouraged agricultural development near its borders. Tribes that cooperated with the empire were granted access to improved agricultural technologies, enabling them to produce surpluses. These surpluses supplied Roman frontier forces and contributed to the local economy. The steady demand for goods also stimulated trade. One crucial commodity was amber, mined along the Baltic Sea coast and transported via the Amber Road to markets within the empire. In addition to amber, the Germans exported fur, animal skins, honey and wax to the Roman Empire in exchange for Roman glass, gold, brass, tin and copper. Trade with Rome brought many Roman coins to the territory of the ancient Germans. Over time, the military and political importance of warrior elites among the ancient Germans grew. Germanic warriors were increasingly recruited into the Roman army, while frequent Roman campaigns into Germania heightened the prestige of those capable of defending their people. Militarization thus became both a reaction to Roman pressure and a means of asserting local power. Before prolonged contact with the Roman Empire, the Germanic-speaking tribes had relatively simple economies based on subsistence farming, limited trade, and decentralized governance. Their interaction with the Roman world, both through cooperation and conflict, led to profound changes. Access to wealth, new technologies, and military opportunities catalyzed the emergence of complex social hierarchies and new political structures. In this way, Germania was transformed from a loosely connected patchwork of tribal communities into a complex frontier society that would later play a crucial role in the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. In the following video, we will explore the Marco-Mannic Wars, which took place in the second half of the 2nd century AD, and the Alemanni tribal confederation's invasion of Roman Empire territory in the mid-3rd century AD.